Hi, it's Richard, and welcome back to the Conscious Marketer podcast. So glad you're here. I'm also joined by Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
Hey there.
And today we have Natalie Jill. She is a fat loss expert turned high performance coach who is changing the conversations around age, potential, and possibility. And she's quite unique. She had an initial career in sales, but kind of moved that into the fat loss area and has over 3 million social media followers and is doing all kinds of amazing things. Hi, Natalie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, can't wait to chat with you.
Yeah, it's your bio is so incredible and long, and you've done so many things. Maybe you could start by sharing with our listeners a little bit of your backstory. It sounds like a pretty long one, but how you made that big shift and transition.
So honestly, I'm just like everybody else. I just have a lot of interests, and I happen to be very good at sales and marketing. That's my jam. That's what I love. To me, selling and marketing is helping people. It's helping find solutions to problems. So I pretty much geek out over that. And I've just sort of applied that to anything I'm interested in life. So years ago, I went into sales right after college. I mean, I was a sales director, I was a sales trainer. That's how I built my career in corporate America. And then back in, 2007, I had my own personal massive setback in my life. I had just had my daughter. That wasn't the setback. That was amazing. But it was right at the time where the housing market had collapsed and the world was changing, especially in the US. And not only was the housing market changing and our finances changing and all of that falling apart, but I was also becoming a brand new single mom. I was going through a divorce myself. And I had, just sort of a lot of stuff happening at the wrong time for me. I had gained a lot of weight while I was pregnant. Not normal weight gain, like depressed eating McDonald's every day weight gain. My body had gotten out of control with weight gain. I was depressed postpartum. I was going through a divorce. I was about to lose my house. I had like a whole tornado of things happening. And it was during those times that my life changed. They always say like rock bottom is sort of the launching pad for your new world. And that is exactly what happened to me. There was actually a moment in a 4-month setback where I was walking and I caught a glimpse of myself in those windows that have a mirror reflection. And I remember having this moment with myself of looking and saying, is this all that there is? Is this where we end up? And I made a decision, just like I'm sure many of your listeners do, especially if they love transformation in that space. I made a firm decision that there was something more for my life and that I was going to be able to help people with what I just went through. And it was in that moment that my fitness, fat loss, nutrition business was decided and was built, literally in that moment.
How did you end up with such a big social media following? I'm super curious about that.
Yeah. So that grew. It's so funny because when I had that decision that I wanted to have something else and have my life, my downfall be a purpose, I remember turning to Facebook. And at the time, Facebook was relatively new. This is 2007. And I had, 100 high school friends on there, and that was it. And I shared on Facebook, hey, this is me right now. I'm in a rock bottom space. I'm overweight. This is what's happening. But I've made a decision that I'm going to turn my life around and I'm going to be sharing it here. Follow along if you want. It was super authentic. It was super raw. It was real. And I put it out there. And that right there is what started getting people interested. You see, when you look at people's social media now, it's really easy to tell who's a marketer and who's authentically selling, right? Marketers they look like everybody else's social. They're doing all the things they're told to do. But somebody that's really authentic, they're sharing what they're walking through and what they're learning, and it's drawing other people in. So Kylie, honestly, it wasn't a grand plan to grow social. It was, I'm sharing what I'm walking through, and I started a conversation with people, and it started to grow from there.
I love that concept of sharing what you're walking through, kind of telling the backstory and being vulnerable. I've been writing a book, and it's kind of funny because I wrote a little bit of a vulnerable post about how I was questioning whether I should even be a writer. And
Yeah.
this is painful. And I've kind of posted it out, and, it's like interesting when you do share just from the vulnerability spot, people kind of show up and support you there.
Absolutely. They love it. They root for you. So the difference is what you don't want is to share from woe is me victim mentality. When you share, I suck, I'm a loser, and you leave it at that, no one cares. It's a Debbie Downer. But when you share, like, this is where I'm at and this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm figuring out, or you actually take people on that journey, that is where people root for you and they want to come along and learn from you too.
Yeah, I teach storytelling primarily in our business. And one of the things that I talk about is the difference between sharing vulnerability versus sharing your humanity, because sometimes people mistake vulnerability for what I would call oversharing. Whereas,
so true.
right?
Yes.
People just want to know that you're a human, that you're just like them, that perhaps you've accomplished something that they want to accomplish, but they want to see that sort of bumpiness of it as well.
You got it, Kylie. That's exactly right. It's almost like that hero's journey too. Like, who I am now is not who I always was, who I always was before. And you sharing that vulnerability, but people want the happy ending. They do. They don't want the every day my life sucks. That doesn't do well for marketing or growing a social account ever.
I'm kind of curious because occasionally we'll have people come and say this happened, and all of a sudden I have this audience of like 50,000 people, or so you started to build this big list, and then you're like, oh shit, what do I do now with it? Like, how did you pivot to actually create a real business out of it when you're like, okay, I kind of something happened here. How do I move this into something that's actually useful?
So in sales, I teach something called listening. We all know that, right? You want to listen and engage your audience and understand their problem and offer solutions. So just like that was my innate ability of sales. So on Facebook at that time, as people were interacting with me, I was curious. I wanted to know what they were doing too, what they wanted to know. And as I shared my stuff, people would ask me questions. Well, how are you eating every day? How are you changing your body? What are you doing? So I took the most common questions and I made deliverables based on that. My very first product, I didn't know what I was doing yet, but it was a recipe book. I shared it. It was called ᴄᴏ Recipe Book. It was $10 and I made it on a PDF. I didn't know anything about sales pages or marketing pages or how to do anything. I built it on my BlackBerry phone and I put a PayPal link up and I said, I have a ᴄᴏ Recipe Book. It's $10. If you want it, here's the PayPal link and I'll send it to you. People bought it. And I remember making, $50 here, $80 there. And it was pretty cool. And from that, people then asked, how are you working out with this? Like, how are you actually losing weight with this? So I made something in a weekend called 7-Day Jumpstart. Now, 7-Day Jumpstart years later is a best-selling book in stores. But at the time, it was a little 12-page PDF I made based on the ᴄᴏ Recipe Book. And I put that on social media too. And I said, this is $35. People would buy it with a PayPal link. I didn't know what I was doing. I would email them the copy. And what I did, which really started to grow my social at the time, was people would have results on 7-Day Jumpstart and they'd send me a Facebook message and it would say, Natalie, oh my gosh, I lost 5 pounds. I lost 7 pounds. I feel amazing. And I'd say, Kylie, that's amazing. Are you okay with me screenshotting this and sharing it with others? It's so motivating. And Kylie would say, yeah, sure. So I would screenshot it and I would put it on Facebook and say, oh my gosh, you all look at this message I just got from Kylie. Again, authentic. She said I can share it. I just want you to see this. It's so inspirational. Who is next? And I kept saying that. And all of a sudden that just kept growing. It like more people were next. They would share it. And that was my initial growth, at least on Facebook. That's at least how it started to grow. And my products continued to expand based on what audience was asking for.
That's really powerful. And it sounds like it almost just happened serendipitously. Like it just kind of one thing led to the next. But when people want to look at actual strategy of like, I'm starting at ground zero, I have no idea how to do this. I don't know what to post. I don't know what parts of my stories I should be sharing. How do you advise them?
Yeah. Well, one, they can't approach to everything with, I don't know. So they've got to know something. So you start with something. So I start with, what do you know? And what's one problem that you solve with what you know? So what one problem, we all have knowledge on some level and we all can help somebody with a problem. It doesn't matter that someone else is already helping with it. It doesn't matter that 1 million people are already helping with it. You think, what do I actually know and do well? And what's the problem I can solve? And then with your help, Kylie, how do I tell my story around that so that I'm relatable and people want to listen to that?
So how do you tell your story around that?
Yeah. Well, you're the expert on storytelling, but I'll take a stab at it too. I mean, it's starting with, you share your story. I mean, you just share, this is who I was. This is what I know. This is what I did. And you share it from a place of feeling so people can understand. People that are scrolling on social media, you're trying to meet them where they're at. So for instance, let's just say I'm talking to someone selling fat loss, and because that's something I came from. You want to think somebody that wants to lose weight in the demographic that you can help, how are they feeling right now? Well, they're probably feeling loss of confidence. They're probably feeling like nothing fits in their closet. They're probably feeling mad at themselves. They're feeling not attractive. So you want to think, when did I feel that way before I figured out the solution? When was the moment I felt that way? And then you start with, hey, like it was September 5th, 99, whatever. And I remember sitting in my closet in this moment and nothing was fitting. And I remember going into self beat up, feeling frustrated, not confident, like I was worthless. You talk about your story and how people are feeling right then when they're meeting you. And then you share that. And then and what I figured out. That's the next step.
It's kind of interesting because I've cycled through some trainers the past 8 years, 9 years, but it wasn't until I hit 50 and then got COVID and Lyme's disease the same day that I kind of got serious about my health in the last year. And I found somebody who's really just amazing. I'm kind of curious because it took some significant trauma and some like milestones for me to make that choice. And then the other thing is just the understanding of how fitness as an entrepreneur, as a conscious being, how it affects all the areas of your life. How do you get people to see the full picture and to make that transformational choice?
So when it comes, it's really honestly with anything that I sell, whether somebody hires me for sales help or they hire me for mindset or fat loss or whatever it is that they want to work with me from, there's a method and I call it decide, vision, action. So number one is, what is your decision? And if you're not in a place of decision, transformation will not happen. So Richard, you were not in a place of decision until the pain got greater than possibility, right? So when people make decisions, when they are actually ready to. So action will not happen if you're not firmly ready to. Like, for instance, you think of somebody listening and they're like, oh, I can't build my social media. I can't build a business. It's not working. And they're in this whole story of why it's not working. I'll tell you what, they haven't actually decided they want it to work yet. I stand firm on that. When we make decisions and we have a firm decision around something, that's when change happens. It's true with our body, with our finances, with our relationships, with all areas. It has to come from a place of decision first.
Whether people are doing social media or sales or marketing, you mentioned that some of the stuff that you like to really help people with is mindset. What are some of the top mindset strategies that you have for people?
Yeah. So number one, it's making that decision. So what is your actual decision and believing in that? Because when people say things like, I'm going to try to lose weight or I'm going to try to start a business, that's not a definitive decision, right? That I'm going to try. Like if I'm going to try to pick up the pencil's never going to get picked up. So number one is, what are you actually deciding for yourself? What is that decision? And I get people get very stuck on that, but until someone actually makes a decision, nothing's going to change. After that, it's what's your vision? What's the possibility? And we have to get really clear on a vision of creating something. Before you, Kylie, you and Richard started this podcast, you had a vision for what the podcast would be. If you hadn't, just taking actions and just starting a podcast randomly wouldn't have amounted to anything. So the next step with mindset is, what is your actual vision? What do you want? How is that going to feel when you get there? What's the experience going to be? If we skip that step, it's going to get very hard to have successful actions. So those two things are the place that I work on first with people before we get into any actions and deliverables.
And what are some strategies that you use and mindsets to help keep people on track? Because I see a lot of people initially make that decision and they get this kind of dopamine hit to buy the program or they enroll or they hire the trainer, and they might even have a vision, but then they're in like a week or 2 weeks and all of a sudden they're like, shit, this is a lot of hard work. And
and then they didn't have the right decision or vision. It's always that. When you are on fire about your decision and vision, you don't lose motivation. If you make the wrong decision or have the wrong vision, or it's a lazy vision, you are going to lose motivation. So that's the misleading thing. No coach, no person you hire, no consultant can make you get motivated and stay motivated. But they can facilitate you getting to the correct decision and vision so that you stay there. When that's actually there, it works. And then there's things that you have to do that are buffers. Like I think of all my clients, like I'm not cheap. I'm not inexpensive. So someone hires me for sales, they're going to do it because there's an investment that they're making into it. So everybody's hit differently with investment as far as time or money, but sometimes you have to make things a little painful for yourself to make yourself follow through with it. And everybody knows personally what that is going to be for them. So some people, that's why free never really works for anyone. If something's just totally free, it's like there's no vested interest in that. But when you make a certain financial investment or something, or a certain time commitment, you're going to be more invested in it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Our clients, similarly to yourself, are very multi-passionate. It's pretty extraordinary that you've been able to have your finger in a lot of different pots and be successful in all of those areas. And you're talking about making the right decision. So some of our clients and some of our audience members, they are very multi-passionate and they want to go in this direction, but then they want to go in this direction and then they want to do this. So what are some of the frameworks that you have in place to help people make that right decision as opposed to the wrong decision?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I'm not of the mindset that you only have to do one thing. Like I know a lot of people teach that like focus only here, like that would not work in my personality. I'm very ADHD. I'm very creative. I like different things. I made a decision quite some time ago that I didn't want one business. I wanted 7 different streams of income that are very different things, because to me, that lights me up. I would rather have 7 different interests that do really well versus one massive business that's doing like another level. Cause I knew for me, I didn't want a big, huge team, and I do change my interests frequently. So that was my decision. So number one, it's working with your personality, because if you try to change your whole personality based on what someone's telling you, that's not going to really work. That's number one. And then 2, it's going to come back to that clarity of decision and vision, because when you are laser clear on what your decision and vision is, it's going to get a lot easier to stay focused. And I put a lot of blocks in my place so I don't get distracted into other things. For instance, I mean, these are just little random tips. Like I don't have email on my phone, not ever. Email is not on my phone. Why? Because then all of a sudden everybody else's time sensitive thing becomes my time sensitive thing. So instead I'm like, okay, I know when I check emails, and when I do, it has my undivided attention, and that's when I deal with them, but I don't let them come into my phone. I don't have notifications on my phone. So I'm not constantly just randomly getting somebody else's, they need this from me type of thing. I also create a lot of systems. Like all my clients, there's one way that they can reach me. They can't just send an email and WhatsApp and this. It's like I have one system for those things, so I can stay focused in those different areas. So it's not about being focused on one passion. It's about being focused on your overall vision and your decision, and then putting bumper rails in place so that you can make the most of your time each day.
I love your energy and your passion for everything you're doing. And I know it kind of seems like some of the things you've done have cycled through what you're going through in your life. Can you tell me kind of what the next chapter is? I know you have some things about the midlife conversation, and you have I think an Instagram channel of 688,000 followers. So a lot of people follow you. Can you share a little bit about what your next stage is and what you're working on now?
I'm definitely working on more of the sales stuff. I've taken on a few private clients as a fractional sales officer, which I love doing. That goes right into my ADHD personality of having different interests. So I take on a fractional role within other people's brands and companies, helping them with sales. As far as my midlife conversations, I have a summit that's about to launch. I wanted to do a bunch of deep dive conversations where I'm not the expert, where I had a bunch of different guests on hormones and gut health and what's happening with our bodies as we age, just all the becoming an empty nester, all the topics around midlife. That's about to air soon. And from that, I do have a program that's actually called Your Next Chapters, where I'm going to help other people in midlife level up and achieve a bigger goal.
What are some of your strategies around sales? I mean, everybody can do sales that can do sales, but what are some of the things that are unique about your particular process?
So I wouldn't say that I don't know that it's unique, but I'm going to say the things that work and that I teach with sales is number one, conviction and certainty. That's the thing that's missing from most people in sales. Nobody buys from wishy-washy. People buy from people that have conviction and certainty about results. So number one, anyone listening, if you've got an offer and you're wondering why it's not selling, my question to you is, do you have conviction and certainty that that's the answer for people? Because people want definitive answers that something's going to help them. That's number one. Number two, I'm a huge fan of really strong question-based selling. So really strong active listening. My first job in sales was right after college. I sold corrugated boxes. And I used to go cold call warehouses to sell corrugated boxes. Now, a corrugated box is a corrugated box. There's not that many features and benefits about it. There's not that much excitement. I could have said it was all sold on price, but I remember I would come back into my manager's office every day at 3:00. And I would work on pricing with him. And he would ask me 20 million questions about the prospect. What are they using the boxes for? What are they going to do with them? Who were they using before? Where did they previously buy their boxes? He would ask me so many questions that it taught me never to ever leave a session or cold call or a meeting without having all the answers. So my number one thing in sales, get super inquisitive, ask a lot of questions, spend more time asking questions than talking, a lot more time asking questions. When you truly get people talking and you fully fully understand their pain, their concern, you will know if your product or your offering can help them. And if and only if it can truly help them, then with conviction and certainty, tell them.
Well, you're just kind of like giving us so many great ideas, and I love the decision and vision and the certainty and conviction around sales. I'm kind of curious because a lot of our work, we have a lot of therapists and healers and people who are probably in softer markets. How do you blend in some of your own kind of like deeper searches for meaning in life into everything that you do? Is there a way that you blend that into your own business?
So I'm definitely somebody of faith. So that's important to me. And that's actually newer to me in the last few years. I also very much believe everyone's on their own personal journey, spiritually or with God or whatever it is that they believe. So to me, it's not about me preaching in my business or to other people what they need to believe. I practice what I believe, and that comes through in how I show up in the world and in my deliverables and in my programs and my products. And I know who I'm answering to. And so that's how I act and create from.
So what are some ways that people can work with you if they want to find out more about what you do?
Yeah, great. Well, they can go to midlifeconversations.com. That's my new website around midlife conversations. Or they can go to nataliejill.com, and that's where you'll find all of my original stuff. And if you're interested in the sales side, fractionalsalesofficer.com.
I love it. Thanks so much, Natalie, for being here today and sharing all your wisdom with our listeners. And if you're listening, you want to get the show notes, you can go to consciousmarketer.com/podcast, and you can get this episode, and we'll drop the links for all of Natalie's sites there. Thanks, Natalie, so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you. Thanks for your wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all the listeners, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye for now.